Just to set things straight, DreamQuest is the original deck-building dungeon crawler. The Slay the Spire genre is often overdone. There are just a million copycat games on Steam these days, and most are not as good. So I was initially skeptical of Hellcard, but I'm a fan of the developer and their previous game Book of Demons, which is a love letter to Diablo. So I still had a good amount of hope going into our playthrough. I was not disappointed, and indeed Hellcard is actually both a better game and a stronger co-op experience than I had hoped for. The game manages to both follow the established rules and strength of the genre, while introducing a couple new mechanics that really make it feel like its own unique thing. Finally, the co-op is surprisingly deep. I can't remember many other games where we had so many conversations about moves and strategy, and where those conversations paid off so well. So how does this work? Well, each player gets their own separate deck and builds it over the course of the game by adding, removing, and upgrading cards. If you die, it's permanent, and you will lose your deck and all upgrades and have to start a new run. Each player gets to pick which area they want to explore each level. This sets the enemy types they will encounter and the possible rewards. Once you actually get into the level, the board will be split into 3 pie slices. The slice that your character is in will be the environment and enemies that you picked, but the slices with your friends' characters will be the environment and enemies of their choice. The board is divided into near and far distance. This affects both the party and where they can attack, and also enemies. For instance, the ranger normally deals twice as much damage to far enemies, while the warrior deals twice as much to near foes. Some enemies can only attack from near, while some can only attack from far. There are cards that push and pull as well, so the battlefield can be manipulated a bit to your advantage. Also, since the game utilizes a board, AoE attacks are also a big part of the game. There are many cards with different size circles and cones that can be aimed precisely, which adds quite a bit of depth to the game as you find the perfect spot to aim an ability. The final thing that sets apart Hellcard from the Slay the Spire and the ocean of deck builders is that you'll encounter lots of basic enemies with some type of special mechanic. Like if you hit the zombies but don't kill them, it will deal 1 damage back to you. If you hit a berserker and don't kill it, it will gain attack. Some enemies summon other enemies, while some enemies debuff you if you don't kill them. Combine this with trying to use AoE abilities without hitting certain enemies, and your allies throwing around a bunch of cards as well, and it can make for some pretty difficult but fun calculations. These 3 different mechanics combine well to give Hellcard a bit of a twist from other games, and that's before we even start to talk about the co-op. To say that Hellcard has co-op is actually kind of an understatement. It's only a co-op game. It allows up to 3 players. If you do decide to play by yourself, there will still be 3 characters, as you can choose a new companion after every level, but you will have to play their cards as well, so you'll be playing 3 hands. Also, you only get to see 2 cards at a time from your companions. So this game is really a much better experience with friends, although it's passable playing by yourself. Probably the thing that Hellcard does the best is generating conversations between players. This happens because the order that players use skills really matters. Your wizard might shield the party from an AoE attack right before your ranger takes out the enemy that was attacking, making the block unnecessary. Or your warrior might be about to shield bash an enemy and asks the wizard to give him some block before he does so the attack hits harder. I've rarely experienced or even heard of co-op games that have this much conversation between players. This isn't required on absolutely every turn, as some turns the plays will be obvious or you will have learned the combos that work best with your different decks, but it happens quite frequently, and it's both really fun and different.
I can take out...
Right. I can zap, or I can freeze, but I can't do both.
Alright, I can mark something. Does that help?
I can freeze all of these.
That does seem pretty good, actually. And then I can go ahead and take out this.
And I have my attack for 1 and finish something. Spells, I have 2 of them.
Oh, okay.
You
Well,
want to, prioritize those guys. Here, let me finish him.
Deck building in a co-op game is a lot of fun as well. Players can and should discuss their deck strategy, as their allies can drastically help out by including synergy cards in their own deck. For example, if the warrior goes with a shield bash deck, where they can deal damage based on how much block they have, then the wizard can include some really powerful block cards in his deck to block the warrior from more right before he uses the shield bash. Game joining is through Steam, so the best experience in my opinion. No unlocks needed before playing with friends. Online co-op only, so each player needs to own a copy of the game. You can play co-op with either 2 or 3 players. If playing with 2 players, you will encounter 2/3 of the enemies, but the game is still probably slightly harder than with 3. You can join a game with random people if you don't have friends to play with.
They're kind of exactly where I want them.
The deck building is top-notch and provides quite the power high. You'll go from hitting a single enemy for 1 damage at the beginning of a run to being able to do things like this.
Yeah!
Nice.
This is one of the better deck builder games, even before factoring in the co-op aspect. The co-op is fantastic and generates a ton of conversation, rewarding synergy. There are some bugs, but for a beta there are actually very few. The developer has done a really good job at keeping the game clean and is ahead of the curve in that regard. Can be a bit slow or tedious to find the perfect play. This is mostly a stylistic thing, so probably fans of the genre will be fine and enjoy the slow, strategic nature of the game. Just be aware that it's a slower game, and turns take quite a while. I would say sometimes up to double what a Slay the Spire turn would take. If you disconnect, there is currently no way to rejoin a battle in progress. You will have to start the floor over again, and if you've lost health, you won't regain it. The game is still in beta, so it's not too big of a deal, and I have high hopes that the devs will address this before launch. They have a really good system in place for players to report and discuss bugs with them. This is a solid game that perfectly executes on the idea of co-op Slay the Spire, something I've been wanting for a long time. It narrowly misses a perfect 10 for both of us, but I'm confident that it will hit that for a lot of people. That said, we only recommend this game for the multiplayer, so only buy if you have friends to play with or you are okay playing with random people through the queue. Hellcard releases sometimes in Q1 of 2023 and will be priced at $20. Or you can currently pick up the Return to Game Supporter Pack for $69, which gives you access to Hellcard, their previous game Book of Demons, and all future games and betas in the Paperverse series. All games will share the same art style, and there will be at least 7 games in total.